Warning.
Watch very closely now. 3, 2, 1. Bzow! Check that out.
The following podcast features terrible jokes.
Did you know you can use Hot Wheels cars when you need to make a saving throw in D&D? Every car is die-cast.
Usually about board games.
We want the fun. Gotta have that fun.
Must insist that no one attempt to recreate any joke performed on this podcast.
We had less technical issues than $1 million company.
All right!
This is Boards and Swords.
That one rings a little hollow now that we talk about said $1 million company later on. But welcome to Boards and Swords. This is a podcast featuring bad jokes, good folks, and some tabletop games. I'm your host and currently being blinded and by this light I gotta turn down. I'm your host, Chris Renshaw. Wrapped up like a douche. Anyways,
Deuce.
I know
The word
it's
is deuce.
I know it's deuce. Anyways, that sound you hear, that's that's my partner in crime down there, Mr. Philip Herbig. How's it going?
What's going on? Hey, shh, about the crime, man. Shut up.
And then joining us this week, we have the role player himself. We have Keith, the head of Thunderworks Games. How are you doing today?
Hey man, thanks for having me.
So for those that maybe aren't as familiar with role player cartographers, what other kind of what games does Thunderworks Games like to stick with?
I mean, kind of our bread and butter is like the 60 to 90 minute medium weight Euro game. We always support, so like all our titles support single player, so we spend a lot of time supporting solo players as well. But we're kind of big into kind of thematic Euro games, I guess. I don't think like none of our games have. I wouldn't say our games are heavy, but they tend to be kind of medium plus, maybe medium minus, right around in the middle of the road.
It's the sweet spot. Like that's about like the limit that I go to in this point in time for my board games, where it's like if it's meatier than a Thunderworks game, I'm probably not. It's not worth my time right now.
Yeah, so I mean, Role Players was kind of our first big one. Cartographers is probably our best-selling title. Has won a ton of awards, and we kind of have a fantasy universe of games that we've been adding individual games to that are all thematically connected but mechanically disconnected. So they're all kind of standalone experiences. But if you're into the world, you can kind of get all the Easter eggs between them. And then we've got some other non-fantasy stuff. So whether we've got like 10 Penny Parks, which is about building theme parks. We've got a game called Cape May, which is about the city of Cape May, New Jersey, and we've got a cyberpunk game that was on Kickstarter earlier this year that's coming out later called Metro Runner. So we've got kind of our fantasy stuff, and then we've got some other goodies coming too.
It's funny. It literally was last week when Philip was like, "Wait, this game says it's a it's a role player or I forgot what it was.
Role player tale. A lot of those games.
Yeah, a role player tale. He's
Yep.
like, wait a minute, these games are all in the same universe. And he's played cartographers. He's played role player.
It's and it's kind of like a fun part of what we do. Like, I don't want anybody to ever feel like they can't play this game because they haven't played this other game.
Right.
But for people who are kind of into it, like, there's a lot of thematic connections, and some of that came out of like, hey, we're making another fantasy game. Like, why should we invent like a brand new world when we kind of already have one going? Let's just kind of figure out how it fits in. And that was kind of started with, we had Role Player going, and then we released a game called Lockup, which is a game about a bunch of crew members in a fantasy prison. And so we just had to like figure out where that sat in the world. And me and the writers of the Role Player Adventures games kind of spent a lot of time making sure everything makes sense and that like we know what time period different games are taking place. But all that stuff is pretty unimportant to the customer who just picks up this cool fantasy game and reads the rules and plays it. But it's important to us.
Yeah. We'll get back on it, but I will say that's the best kind of like crossover where it's you don't have to play each game, but the really nerdy of us that are like, ooh, we can like pull the strings together and have the huge board with the red strings and be like, this was in that and that was in here, and
Yeah.
but everybody
100%.
else is just like, I just want to play the game. Can we just start playing? You don't understand.
Exactly.
Yeah, and as Rusty Beetle says, no campaign for North Africa for me. Not unless they made a 40K version. So, with that, let's we're gonna get back to talking Thunderworks games, but first, we have some news.
News.
And I even made a fancy screen here. So now there's the thing and which right now-
Whoa.
yeah. Here we go. I was on the beach watching some sea animals attack some creatures on the shore. Each side would get a little bit further and then it get knocked back. I guess you could say it was a tide battle. The slow dawning. So Warhammer 40K. Remember there's the tabletop game 40K, and then they made a video game called 40K Darktide, and then they made a tabletop game based on the video game based on the tabletop game. So, Warhammer 40K's co-op shooter Darktide returns to the land of plastic and resin in a new skirmisher. So there's a new, let's see, did I get the one that actually had the... Yeah, so there's going to be a new box set coming out for fans that liked the... actually, pre-orders this weekend. The Warhammer always puts up their preview, what's coming out for pre-order on Sundays, and I just looked, and it was this is coming out. Yeah. So the miniatures game transmutes the setting, plot, and characters of Fat Shark's cooperative action shooter video game into a mission-based tabletop experience for up to 4 players as they mow down chaos hordes and hunt traitorous holdouts within the hive city of Teritium, I guess. But yeah. For those that don't know, 40K Darktide is basically just Left 4 Dead set in 40K. There's more to it than that, but fundamentally, when it comes down to it, you're just fighting like wave on wave of, zombies basically, but they're infected chaos cultists and stuff.
Ah, okay.
So the guardsmen have gone rogue, and the Imperium has dispatched 4 very expendable press-ganged prisoners to bring them to justice. You can either play the veteran, the zealot, the Ogren, or the psyker and wade through hordes of enemies to accomplish the impossible. Now, the one thing I saw people say that they don't like is the fact that they're reusing old minis to basically do this. So they just basically are taking sprues that they just had laying around and throwing them into the box instead of like coming up with new sculpts for this specific game. So there's like people that already had those minis and are like, man, I wanted something new. And Games Workshop let them down. So
I will find a way to get over it.
the good news is that it's not so like it is a standalone game. Like you don't have to play 40K to enjoy this game. It works on its own. However, you can also use these minis, and the rules are based on their 40K Kill Team, which is their smaller scale skirmish game. So like it's its own standalone thing. But at the same time, it kind of bridges the gap into like Kill Team, which is like, about the same amount of models. I think it's Kill Team is usually between 5 to 10 models, and this is like 4. So, as it says in here, the hope seems to be that Darktide will bring over video game only friends of Warhammer, show them how skirmish titles work, and introduce them to Kill Team and other smaller scale miniature warfare. So yeah. Philip, you never played Darktide, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I think I gave my invite code to you.
It wasn't to me.
Oh.
Because I ended up getting it myself.
Okay. I gave my like beta invite code to somebody.
Oh yeah, I definitely didn't play during the beta. No. But yeah, I definitely saw. I know a couple of people that are probably going to pre-order this right away. That probably have the minis already in here, but they were big fans of Darktide when it first came out. But I do like the I like the idea here of how they've made it close to kill teams so that, it's like you can take this and then transmute it right into the other game we have.
Yeah.
Just like that's the one good thing I will say Games Workshop does is they give you different ways to play with their minis. Like I was reading their White Dwarf magazine, and there was a new combat patrol in the magazine. So it was like, here's all these minis that you may have had from other things. Now here is a configuration you can use them in with their own special rules and special like strats and objectives and that sort of thing. So it's like all you had to do, and you even got like punch out data cards for them because in Combat Patrol everything's like locked in. There's no configuring anything. It's you have these models, you have these strats, you're done. Like it's a very boiled down intro level to full up 40K. But that was kind of cool, and it even had all the punch outs and stuff in the magazine. So, all right.
Very nice.
Moving on, I was stuck on the new Zelda game till I found a person with a lot of helpful tips. I'll drop a link to his stuff below. So, Stonemaier Games announced their new big game that's going to be this year, which the rumor was, or a lot of the, I think it's even says, I can't remember. There was a bunch of other stories talking about how like it was inspired from Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is where the Zelda joke came in. But it's announced Vantage, a new game designed by Jamie Stegmaier for mid-2025 release. That's actually okay. I spent this last 7 years creating this game, which is nearing the end of its playtest process and almost complete. Production is expected to start later this year. It's an open-world cooperative game that takes place on an uncharted planet after an intergalactic vessel crashes far from any companions. It offers a complete planet to explore with nearly 800 interconnected locations on cards and other 900 other discoverable cards. Vantage, a roguelike adventure game, not a campaign game. Players communicate while scattered across the world. Each player can communicate with and support other players who are separated by vast distances, but only the player can see their own location. And there's not even going to be any expansions planned, although there will be a few accessories like metal coins.
Oh, no. Hang on. You missed the best part of that sentence.
What? Oh,
the game is
contained?
completely elf contained.
Yeah.
Okay, I want that typo to somehow be worked into. It's elf contained. It's not self contained.
I gotta say that sounds actually pretty dope. Like Jamie's pretty good at when it comes to
800 locations on cards.
Yeah.
And 900.
It's
I want to know what the
that
shipping cost.
procedurally generated feel.
I want to know what the shipping cost on that box is.
He was talking on Board Game Geek today how like you could potentially like circumnavigate the planet if you went to the right locations or something.
Oh my
god. Yeah, it sounds like a massive project.
Yeah. Yeah, it does kind of raises some eyebrows where it's like you're checking all the right boxes, but it's also one of those, are we setting things, is it going to be too big to and then it'll come out and not live up to the hype.
That's the danger about hype.
Yeah. Which is why I'm kind of curious. It's a mid-2025, and we're already getting so much about it.
I was surprised he announced it so early.
Yeah.
Because traditionally in the past, Stonemaier will either announce it when it's available.
Right.
Soon, right before it's available to their followers directly from their website, and then it's basically already been printed and on its way on the water from China. So this is the first time he's, at least that I know, that he's announced a game this early in a while. And then there's a bunch of drama around the he's like selling metal coins for it right now.
Weird.
So you can buy metal coins for a game that's going to come out over a year from now.
I mean,
it seems kind of weird, but
it is weird. But at the same time, I bought a duplicate set of Scythe metal coins to just have on my shelf for any time I wanted to use metal coins in a game. So it's not completely out there. Like, I've used Stonemaier metal coins in other games before.
Yeah, the scythe ones are nice.
Yeah. I guess it depends. Like if they look like super cool, then I could see that. But I'm wondering if maybe there's like he's expecting this to be a bigger hit and he's trying to gauge interest, maybe, or he's wanting to.
Definitely a game of that size, like if you overprint a game like
Yeah.
it's pretty risky if you overprint something that's that expensive to manufacture. But
That's what I'm wondering if he's using this and using the con season to kind of build hype for it. Because yeah, when I put this article in here, I thought this was coming out like in a like soon.
yeah,
Because that's the way he usually operates. So
yeah.
When will then be now?
soon. He's pulling the Blizzard soon here.
There we go. Time's relative.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of open world games, back in the Middle Ages, an enemy army sieged a castle to find everyone waiting for them in chairs around the table. When asked why they didn't resist, the soldiers replied, "This is a citadel." So there was a game called Seventh Continent that came out like way like back when Gloomhaven first came out and that sort of thing. And then in 2020, that year where nothing really happened in 2020, right?
Nope.
They released a sequel to it called Seventh Citadel. Well, because nothing happened in 2020, people are just now getting the game now. So Seventh Citadel's out, and so it's generated some buzz, and therefore they are going back to Kickstarter. So Seventh Citadel, the open world board game that raised almost £3 million on Kickstarter, is coming back to crowdfunding. So now that everybody's getting the game, and people are like, "Oh, this game's cool, I want in," well, now you can. So it's a sequel to 2017's The Seventh Continent, an adventure board game series. So Seventh Continent is about exploring an alternate version of the early 20th century in search of a cure to the curse that has plagued them since they first traveled to the Seventh Continent. In Seventh Citadel, players also interact with the same choose-your-own-adventure style gameplay system with some entirely new elements on top of that. It's a co-op board game, explore a post-apocalyptic medieval fantasy world called The Collapsing Lands, which features things such as necro-druids and burrowers. And then, a lot of this is fairly common. You unveil part of the map, experience different story beats, and then you will encounter a bunch of scenarios that lead up to the final board game's threat. So, in many ways, the Seventh Citadel is like an open-world fantasy board game with players choosing where to go and what to do at will. So I did not plan for these two to just kind of be back-to-back like that, but it works. So backers of that game will have recently received their copies of the board game with a new campaign now heading to Kickstarter to give those people who may have missed out the first time an opportunity to get their own copy. This new Kickstarter will launch on June 4th. With the game securing a like everybody else has got partnerships with like BackerKit and GameFound to publish their Serious Pulp, I guess. Is now going to be launching all their crowdfunding projects on Kickstarter until the end of 2026.
Okay.
That just goes to tell me Kickstarter's getting desperate.
I mean, like their market share has been
and they pull in
divided.
They pull in a lot of money from board games. Because board games is one of the few categories where they will have these massive things and actually deliver. Like,
yes,
the amount of video game Kickstarters that don't deliver is real high.
I have one video game Kickstarter that has delivered, and I think I have one we still get updates on, but they're still.
Is it Star Citizen?
Coding the game? No, it's not Star Citizen.
Jason tells me about Star Citizen all the time.
Isn't that thing? It's still not even in version 1 yet, is it?
I don't think so. I think it's still technically in early access or whatever.
That's nuts.
Yeah, I think board games is the #1 category on Kickstarter, and it's interesting that some, more people are moving over to BackerKit or GameFound. Some people are trying those out and coming back to Kickstarter. Some of these some of these companies are offering contracts to
Yeah.
people to stay on their platform and not go to other platforms. So it's an interesting time. For me, I've always done Kickstarter, and I probably will stay there unless someone offers me a compelling reason not to.
Right.
Um,
But
because
how
that's
do you
where my
do
audience is already.
the back end of your?
So yeah, for our pledge manager, we've used a bunch of different things. I've used CrowdOx, I've used BackerKit,
Okay.
but um, one of my one of the four Thunderworks employees, this guy Kirk Dennison, he and his brother built their own pledge manager, and so I used that for many years, because it was more affordable. Because those pledge managers want to, they want a cut of whatever you raised, and I don't want to give people cuts of the money that this kind of earmarked towards making the game.
Right.
Um, so now we're using a new service called JetBridge
Mm.
that kind of funnels people through like a, a pledge manager experience, but then it slides into our Shopify store. So um,
That's
it's really good at capturing data from our customers. If people add on, they can add on pretty much anything that's already in our store onto their pledges, and then it just kind of flows into our shipping system, and then it just goes out the next day. Like so, that is a new service. It's being run by Ben, who owns Floodgate Games. I don't know if you're familiar with those guys.
yeah.
Uh, who do like Sagrada and some other stuff, and Kites and some other stuff. Super good guy, and he's just kind of getting the system off the ground. And we're one of the first people to use it. We used it on our Metro Runner campaign, and we were really happy with it. And it's continuing. He's adding features that we're requesting and stuff. So we'll continue to use JetBridge, I believe, at least for the near future. I don't know those bigger companies with the backer kit and the GameFound stuff. I mean, GameFound was sweet when it was free, and then it's not free, and then um, there's just a bunch of technical limitations because Thunderworks does our backer kit system different than other people do. And the thing is, all different creators have different needs, and they try to create this one version of the software that meets everybody's needs, and it ends up not really meeting anybody's needs in my experience. So,
Yep.
that's our plan. I mean, we look for the best solution for us, and then we go with that. And then when the next time around, we look again. Like we don't stick to one thing. We're always looking for a better option
What's
or
the best for this
solution
specific
we're trying.
project?
Yeah.
That's
Every project has different needs.
I hadn't heard about that JetBridge, but that does sound like kind of like the best option of what I've heard, because it's like fundamentally you want everyone to be funneling towards your website anyways. So
Yeah.
it kind of like does that. Like I get you. I understand why people use Kickstarter versus other sites, because there's a community around Kickstarter that it cuts down on your advertising, because as long as it appears on there, you're going to get
People
seen.
are comfortable with that platform. They're already
Right.
on there backing stuff. It's kind of like Kickstarter is kind of like the default crowdfunding platform for
Yeah.
board games, right? So it's like the Kleenex of facial tissue. And now there's other options, but I still think Kickstarter is the king. I don't have the data myself, but I think for the types of games that I do, Kickstarter is probably the best bet. I think if I had big boxes with lots of miniatures on it, then GameFound might make a little bit more sense, because those kind of games, it seems like the backers over there are more ready to shell out 200, 300 bucks on a board game, whereas that's usually not the kind of stuff that I do.
Yeah. Rusty Beetle says not as much money as potato salad. Oh, I remember that campaign.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I never backed video games on Kickstarter. The dev time is way too long. I will get stuff on early access. That I'm okay with, because at least then there's a product. It may not be.
There is a product,
It may
and there's
not be
also a
good.
warning.
Yeah.
They let you know. You're like, hey, this is early access, okay? It's full of bugs.
Yeah.
There's been a couple like 2D point and click adventure games that I was like, okay, the risk is lower here. Like
Yeah.
the skill required to pull off like a 3D lighting engine versus like just getting these pixels to animate to pull off the story. Like I've done those before, but I've never done any of these big video games because I worked in video games for 15 years. Like, I know what at least at the time, I knew what it take to make these kind of games, and like the budgets that even these massive Kickstarter projects, the amount of money they raise isn't enough to make these games. Not even close to it. So I don't know. It's interesting.
All right. Moving on. I was trying to chat with some friends, but I couldn't get it to work. I tried looking at all my connections and wires, and it turns out the problem was Discord. So, oh, there we go. This is one of those crossovers that I was kind of like, this made sense to me. Like, I was kind of like, bravo. This is one of those pieces that's like, I might actually use. But Roll20's new beta app will allow you to play D&D and other RPGs while you're in your Discord calls. So I know it seems like there's a million different. That was one of the other big fallout from COVID is we suddenly had like a boom of like options for virtual tabletops. So like there's the what is it, Foundry. Like Pathfinder's really big on Foundry, which is also, I know a lot of people like it because it's just a one-time purchase instead of like a monthly cost. And then of course you got Roll20, who's got like a subscription, but you can play it for free. There's one I backed during COVID that was called Roll, just ROLE. I think it's playroll.com. That one was really cool because it was more focused on like the video aspect than it was like I'm gonna make a virtual table, which is why I liked it because a lot of times when I'm DMing, it's more theater of the mind kind of aspects. So.
Oh yeah.
But now, I mean, like a lot of people just use Discord. Like we're in Discord right now for recording this podcast, so a lot of people just use it for playing their D&D games. And now you can have Roll20 is going to be listed in the activities sections of Discord, just like joining the likes of Watch Together, Catan Clone Colonist, and a host of lightweight multiplayer games as software's users launch while on a voice or video call. Which is funny because, like, whenever I'm podcasting and I have the two computers I'm switching back and forth, Discord's always saying, like, oh, you're playing Synergy. Because that's the software I use to connect back and forth.
Yeah.
So the Roll20 app will be fully featured compared to the browser-based original, integrated into Discord's infrastructure. This means loading a digital map and tossing some tokens on the board is not only a couple clicks added to what it takes to join a voice channel, and the companies are promising that the process should be all fairly seamless upon launch. It's going to support the full library. Users who own books and features on Roll20 will have access to those resources and can share amongst players. Alongside character management, three-dimensional dice rolling, and all other quality of life enhancements. The only downside will be convincing your players whether to join Roll20's integrated voice channels or jump into the Discord call. I have a feeling it's not going to be very hard.
I feel like the Discord call is going to be the option.
Yeah.
Like that's
considering you can even run Discord in a browser.
Yeah.
That's always
100%.
fun.
I mean, there are so many games
Yeah.
that have their own voice channels. It's like, screw that noise. We're going to use Discord.
Exactly. Now the whole thing is that right now you have to be a subscriber to Roll20 to use it. They've said that this is only during their beta testing, which makes sense. So pro users will be invited to an exclusive beta test tomorrow, April 30th, which will take place within a private Discord server, likely for ease of feedback and finding a full party. Right now, they've actually looks like they've taken 30% off the price of Pro subscriptions if it's your first time. But they said that once it's like full rolled out and out of beta, it will be available to free members as well. Although I'm sure there'll probably be restrictions on it, just like they have on their free tier, anyways.
Oh yeah, that'll be key.
It's one of those things that's like, if you're running a game, your GM probably needs to be a subscriber, and everybody else will be fine.
Yeah, that'll be.
I'm really. This is actually kind of exciting because I've been seeing a lot more how people have been using Discord for their RPGs. Like when they're running them, like they'll have side channels where it's like, oh, this is where I'm gonna, a random side quest that you could just type out in character what your character's doing to kind of like
Okay.
fill in the background. I've seen some people where they'll do like summary channels, so you can have like a what happened last time. So you don't
Okay.
have to sit there and regurgitate it last time. You could just be like, here's the session report from last time. So there's a lot of cool ways to use Discord in there. Ways I've been experimenting with, because I think the game we're going to run for the patrons is obviously probably going to be through Discord, and so
Yes.
using some of these features would be kind of nice to do. All right, and then lastly, for this last story, I'm reminded of the old adage, every dog has its Asmodee. Ticket to Rides go with the Toys R Us route. So, Ticket to Ride and Catan Maker granted freedom from Embracer along with, that's kind of a weird way.
That is a weird way to, yeah.
Freedom from Embracer along with 900 million pounds of former owner's debt.
No, that's Euro.
Oh, is that Euro? Okay,
That's
then I think I
euros.
got pounds wrong on the other one. I think it was Euros also. Embracer becomes divider. Now, I don't like that headline because technically Embracer will still own them. So the board of directors, the way this is working is Embracer's basically dividing into 3 companies, and Asmodee is going to be its own branch. It's going to have its own IPO that you can go now, instead of Asmodee buying studios, you can buy Asmodee. But the board of directors is still going to be the same board of directors that owns that governs Embracer Group as well. So that's kind of a little misleading. Yeah, Embracer Group. There'll be the Asmodee Group. There'll be all the independent and video game studios will be collected under Coffee Stain and Friends. And then there's going to be, so they bought the Lord of the Rings property.
I didn't know that. That when
Yeah, they
did
bought
we talk about that?
we talked about it. They bought the
Okay.
rights to Lord of the Rings.
Oh.
So remember how I said there was 900 million euros worth of debt?
Oh yeah.
They were buying like everything and everything and everything. So the third company is going to be Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends.
And friend.
And Friends. Everything's and Friends. But yeah, they acquired all this debt, buying up all these properties, and then the rumor mill says, is they were trying to get some Saudi investors to kind of pay off that debt.
Yeah.
And then that fell through, and so now they have all this debt, and so they split the company up and then basically dumped a good portion of the debt on Asmodee. So
No.
I will say, once the story came out, and even me, when I saw the story, it was kind of like well, that's it for Asmodee.
Right.
However, the more I read, because this is what happened with Toys R Us, is they took a property, dumped it with debt, split it off, and then it hit the dirt. But the differences here is Toys R Us was already in a decline when that was happening, whereas
Oh yeah.
I think somebody said Asmodee is one of the biggest money makers in the Embracer Group. As far as profit margins and stuff goes, Asmodee's the one making serious money hand over foot. Especially they got that card game, the Star Wars Unlimited, which is just sending out them dollars. So in that sense, it kind of makes sense to put all your debt there, because that's where you're going to be making all your money, and you can pay down that debt.
It'll get paid off. Oh yeah.
Plus, splitting it into companies and then doing IPOs means that you're going to get all these small. It's crowd. I mean, the stock market is just crowdfunding
It is
for
for giant corporations.
For giant corporations. That's really all it is. So it's just basically they're crowdsourcing the investment instead of trying to get one super backer.
Yeah.
So they can. So I don't know. So Keith, you've got more. I was thinking. I mentioned this earlier. I was just kind of curious from a third party, smaller independent retail or tabletop company. What's your thought? If you had any thoughts on this, if this infected or impacted anything at all?
I mean, Asmodee is like the biggest board game company that exists. So they they have a history of gobbling up kind of smaller board game publishers, and then they kind of get worked into their system, and there's a lot of advantages for them to have kind of smaller kind of creative groups that are funneling into a well-established sales and marketing machine. um that's like, I'm still, we have 4 employees, and I worked out of my basement for a long time, and um uh my interaction with that whole system is pretty minimal. So um sometimes I hear these stories about small publishers getting bought out by Asmodee or whatever, and I think to myself, if Asmodee came to me and wanted to buy Thunderworks, like what would that number be?
Oh yeah.
That's just kind of a fun kind of thought experiment for myself. But that's pretty much it. These guys are talking about, figures that are well beyond anything that I could possibly imagine in terms of pushing big chunks of money around, and um, yeah, it's just not my world yet, I guess.
I just didn't know if you see and hear news stories like this, if you get any thoughts like, are we heading for like a board game bubble burst, or if you get any worries at all about like the state of the industry or anything.
No, I mean, I think, obviously I'm looking at trends
Yeah.
in the industry. During the pandemic, board games were definitely elevated, right? So there was a lot of people buying a lot of games when they were stuck inside their houses, and they were looking for things to do to entertain themselves. So board games were flying pretty high, and jigsaw puzzles as well. And there's been role-playing games have been doing really well in the last few years too. So kind of after that, there's been kind of a leveling off after the lockdowns and the COVID stuff. So um, there's been kind of the market has been cooling a little bit, like, which I'm not surprised. And you try to plan for that. I mean, especially during the pandemic when sales were really, really good, and people were printing kind of larger and larger with the assumption that things would continue to go in that direction. And then when things started to cool off, then people were stuck with inventory,
Yeah.
and then so people weren't printing much at all, which as they were trying to move the stuff that they already had. So it's just kind of the ebb and flow of the industry, and especially the board game market is not that big. So everybody's business kind of affects everybody else's. So, but I'm seeing kind of like, for me, for Thunderworks, like January and February were a little slow. March was great, and April was good. So like, I think we're finding the new normal again. That whatever it is post the pandemic, and I think at the end of the day, we'll still be high in a better spot than we were in 2019. I think things continue to grow, and people enter our hobby, and there's more and more great games being made. So, um, yeah, how does Asmodee fit into all that? I don't really know.
I was just curious. It's just one of those. I had you on the show, so I was just curious if it did. But it will be nice that. I mean, it always sucks when you hear. Like, I always hated it when like the bigger. What am I trying to say? The private equity firms were controlling Asmodee, because like their whole purpose is to just squeeze all the money
Right.
out, and then to beef the pun and then sell them off. So I was happy when Embracer Group, because I was like, oh, this is a company that like makes things and like has properties and
Right.
stuff like that. So, and I mean, having it be its own company, which means it has to stand on its own two legs. Like, you can't make terrible decision. Like, you can't make really, really terrible decisions that are gonna like make your user base go away when it's the only thing keeping the company afloat. Like it's a different when you're taking a hit so that the overall value goes like what's the fundamental goal? Like when it was in the private equity group, it's like they only cared short term. They can lay off a bunch of people and do a bunch of things because at the end of the day, they just want a high value in the short term that they can sell it off to somebody else. But when it's its own company, they have to think long term, or at least somewhat long term, and have to make decisions to that. Now, granted, there was a lot of layoffs that were because of all this, but I think Asmodee ended up not having as much because they had already recently laid off a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So, but it will be interesting to see. Yeah. So it says in here like they had so Embracer had acquired up $2 billion worth of debt. So, and then Asmodee's getting stuck with the €9 million bag of that. Yeah. So, like I said, it'll be interesting to see, and hopefully this means good things for stuff, especially that Star Wars Unlimited game, since I kind of want to see that do well.
It would be interesting if we could see, what that debt is comprised of, right? Like how much of it is Middle Earth property stuff, or
I'm sure somebody's done the math.
yeah, I'm sure somebody has the information.
Yeah, because there was just based purely on public. I mean, because I remember there was a thing where it was like every other week it seemed like you'd see an Embracer group buying, because like they own, like I know they own the people that make Deep Rock Galactic now, or either they did or now own it. Like they own Dark Horse Comics. You got the Middle Earth. Like I said, like the Middle Earth is probably a huge chunk. And I know the buying from Asmodee, I'm pretty sure there was $1 billion in that deal as well, or close to $1 billion acquiring that. So, like off the top of my head, I want to say it was like $1.1 billion, but I could be entirely wrong on that. But
insane.
All right, this article, now I'm bugged by this article in a different way. They keep mentioning all these numbers and they're different currencies. So like they talk about that they acquired $2 billion worth of debt, and then they talk about how Asmodee is getting stuck with €900, and then now they're just talking about Asmodee posted a record SEK, which I think is that South Korea or Singapore? I think Singapore. And now they're like a record SEK, 12.1 billion in sales. I'm like, can we not? Would it really?
Swedish krona.
Swedish krona. That does make okay. I'm like, would it not been hard for you to go into Google and just auto-corrected all those to the same currency?
Well, see, which is even odder, because it then goes on to say that Asmodee's corporate headquarters is going to remain in France.
Yeah. Well,
is Embracer in Sweden?
Probably.
Oh, okay, so then the SEK would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, Asmodee did start as a French company, so that makes sense. So.
But I am tired.
Fire some missiles. All right, Philip, why should people back our Patreon?
Why should people back our Patreon? Well, first off, if you didn't know, where you been? All right, seriously. Patreon.com/boardsandswords, boardsandswords.com/Patreon. That's going to get you where you need to go. What do we got going on? We've got, here we've got the Boards and Swords Discord. All right. The Boards and Swords Discord is free to the general public. All right. But hidden in there, there's special channels. All right. There's special private channels in there that you unlock when you're a Patreon subscriber.
I just showed off that's a really cool image of some stuff I'm working on in there. What did I show off?
There
you got to be a patron to find out.
You got to be a patron to find out. Okay. Second, what happens when you're a patron? You got your favorite games. Chris is gonna dad joke roast the hell out of them. It's so bad it's good. All right. That's what we're working with here. Next,
Philip,
you get dice.
Yeah. So
You got more jokes?
I got bad news for you.
What's up?
So for this year, we're not going to be able to do the dice.
No dice. No dice.
But the good news is the reason there's not going to be dice is because I decided instead what we're going to do for the patrons this year is we're going to give them something to roll those dice in.
Oh.
That's right. I'm working on a dice tower.
Nice.
So
dice towers, folks.
I recently joined a makerspace and they got a laser printer there. So I'm going to be able to like print out a bunch of dice towers and it'll say Boards and Swords on them in the 2020 2023, 24 probably, because I didn't do dice for 23. So I haven't figured that out. If I just give people extra dice towers or something.
We're working on it.
We'll figure it out.
I mean, you need a dice tower in every room.
So maybe I'll do dice for the 23, and then in 24 there will be those patrons. But
keep sending out dice tower. You put a dice tower in every room. All of your decisions are now based on a D20.
It'll be like a trophy.
Every decision in life, okay? You're going to have eggs, bacon, sausage, boom. You just roll the dice in the kitchen. Boom, done. All right, and then the piece de resistance. It will be a live play. We're bringing back the Dirtbags of Holding. And this is from last year, but it's such a good thing. It's the Love Mutants of Castle Heartache. All right. We're going to sit there. It's from Dungeon Crawl Classics, Goodman Games. We're going to play this. We're going to have a great time. Chris, are you going to DM this for us? See, there we go. Chris is showing the cover. All right. I'm the model.
Philip. It's literally Philip.
It's 100% me, guys. All right.
You know, I need to get someone from Goodman Games to come on the show, and then we need to ask them questions about why they hired you to be the model.
John Goodman.
Ask where my royalty checks from the. The thing is, it's gonna be like, because I've seen TikToks of, people who get royalty checks from Netflix.
Yeah, it's like
from like people watching the movies. Yeah, okay, it's like it's pennies. It's pennies per view. But then they get a check for $50, and then they've got a book of pennies per view listing out where the money came from. Like, that's what it is, folks. Patreon.com/boardsandswords. Boardsandswords.com/Patreon.
They'll be like, your royalty check is that $10 coupon we give everybody in the Gen Con envelope. But
I already bought the book though.
But if you just want to join the Discord and you want to be super, super cool, boardsandswords.com/Discord. It's almost like I know this DNS thing really easily.
Hey.
So with that, let's go back to talking about some Thunderworks games here. So, and specifically, I want to focus on talking about this Stonemaier Architects. The heck is that? I just see a Minotaur out front.
What more do you need to know?
I know, right?
So this is our next big title. We ran it on Kickstarter last year. Backers got it last month, and it is releasing to retail tomorrow. It is Sushi Go, the dungeon building game, is how I like to tell people. So it's like you're building everybody's building their own dungeon, 4x4 dungeon. It's like pick and pass cards around the table. Every card is unique. It's got different attributes. Some have like knolls in them. Some have traps in them. Some have like, different monsters and different paths. And they've got different there's some that are like cave floor and some that are stone floor. And you build a row of 4 cards, and then you see how much money you have. And then you can use that money to like buy additional like monsters and traps for your dungeons. And you can build secret passages between the different passages between the different chambers, so that you can have a more connected dungeon, because you'll get points at the end of the game for like a shared goal. Like whoever has the most goblins is going to get X number of points. And then you're going to collect these kind of challenge cards that are personal scoring goals. And then you're also trying to build a path from your exit and to your entrance to get them connected. And you get a blueprint at the beginning that you're trying to match as best you can. So this is from the designer of Cartographers, Jorge Adan. He's Brazilian. So I've worked with him for a long time, and this is kind of his next game for next Thunderworks title. So Stonemaier Architects plays 1 to 5 players. Takes about an hour to play. It's pretty snappy, because everybody's taking simultaneous actions. Right? Here's the cards, you pass them to the neighbor. Here's some cards, you pass them to your neighbor. You're putting them down. It's real quick and easy setup. Plays short short amount of time. 5 players is pretty good. The solo mode is pretty is good as well. You're playing against an AI opponent that you're trying to minimize the points that they're getting as you're getting more points. It goes for the MSRP on it is $45, so it's not the most expensive board game in the world as well. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome components. It's good. Trust me.
I will say, one of the biggest things about just Thunderworks games, this kind of ties in with the combined universe, but the art style is what really I love the Thunderworks art style. That kind of like really sells the collected universe, and it's one of those that, like, if it was a bad art style, then it would suck them all being together, because then you'd be like, eh. But you're like, ooh, it's another game with that cool art.
I mean, it really harkens back to the basically D&D art style from the 80s and the 90s, right? So it's not kind of way off in left field, like super identifiable as this particular artist. It's kind of has a classic fantasy feel. I love the Larry Elmores of the world, and the Keith Parkinsons of the world, and even Braun back in the day. Like I live in Wisconsin, right? This is where Dungeons and Dragons was invented.
Oh, yeah.
D&D is a big deal here, and there's a lot of those artists that are actually still around. So my roots go pretty deep with the D&D stuff. So that's the overall look. To me, that is fantasy, and these are fantasy games, so that's the way I want them to look. And the artwork is great. We got like maybe two. We had maybe 4 illustrators that have been doing these role player world games for a while, but I'm doing all the art direction for all of them, right? So every image that gets into any Thunderworks title is approved by me. So it's got to hit a certain quality. It has to have a certain consistency, so like there's like little things like the goblins that are on the cards in Stonemaier Architects. Is we have the image of the goblins that we drew for Role Player Adventures at the same time to make sure that it's in the same style and it has the same look about it.
Is this a goblin you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. That guy. There's a goblin that looks, very, very similar to that in Role Player Adventures in both of those games. So, so it's consistent across that, and we've got the same team that are working on these to make sure that they have a similar look. And consistency is king at the end of the day. Yeah, so it turned out really good, and people have been really enjoying it. We've been sending a lot of review copies recently, so I invite you to go check it out. And if you I don't know if you're into this, but we had Rodney Smith do a nice how to play video on it and recently. So if you're not big into rule books, we've got some pretty good how to play videos out there too that can help you get started faster. So yeah, that's the next big game from Thunderworks, and we're pretty excited about it. So we traditionally do 2 to 3 games a year, and so this is kind of the first one for 2024, and then our next big one is the Cyberpunk one, Metro Runner, which comes out for Gen Con in August. So those are the big games for this year. And we've got some crowdfunding projects coming later this year as well. It's another in this role player cartographer's world, which we call the world of Ulos. There in the past we did a game called Goblin Vaults, which was referenced in one of our other titles, but it's basically like a card game that the fantasy prisoners play in the fantasy prison that we have. But there's there's 2 games that they play. One is called Goblin Vault, which we released a game based on it. So it's a game from the game.
Nice.
And there's another game that's mentioned in the lore called Emerald Skulls, which is a dice game. So we're planning in July 2nd to be doing a Kickstarter campaign for that. So that's I'm really excited about that game. I mean, I'm really excited about all these games, but the Emerald Skulls is we've got a dice game coming out called Emerald Skulls, and this I we play test these things like crazy, right? And we always bring them to events, prototype events, and internally, and we send them out. And Emerald Skulls is the game that I've gotten the most comments from people just randomly that are like, "Hey, I played that dice game that you're doing. That game's awesome." So I'm really excited about that one coming up too. So uh, that we're gonna crowdfund in July.
You haven't talked about
And then
the best product you have that I just found the website. You
so
gotta
you gotta check out that plushie. Yeah,
I am all there. There's a trend of like board game companies making plushies, and I am here for it.
let me go grab. Oh no, I've got. It's big.
Oh, really?
Like I mean, not like huge,
But
but
yeah,
it's like
it says on here it's about
it's like
Build-A-Bear size.
yeah, it's like pretty big. Like,
That's awesome.
And he's super squishy, and so obviously there's board game companies that are doing these plushies, and we're like, hey, that's cool. Let's try it too. So people really responded to the Minotaur, and maybe we'll do another one. We'll see. I mean, we try these things. We try these little experiments. It's always nice to try little different things. We during the pandemic, we did some jigsaw puzzles. We did like a graphic novel based on our fantasy world last year, 2 years ago, and then now we've got the plushie. Definitely, the plushies have been the most successful of kind of the experiments that we've been doing. So, come July 2nd, when we're talking about Emerald Skulls, you might see the next plushie from Thunderworks Games.
Yeah, I am all here for it. Although it may have to be one of those things where I go get some at Gen Con, and maybe I'll just line the bookshelf here behind me.
There you go. Yeah, we'll have them at Gen Con for sure.
Oh, how could you not? Like that's a you put that up where people can see it, and that draws people into the booth. Like I've never heard of Thunderworks Games, but that is adorable.
I mean, that's true. And I think a lot of people will go to conventions and like the last day they'll be like, "Oh, I need to get something for my kid before I go home or whatever," and they're like, "That, please."
Yeah, that's me and my wife. I'll be like, "Hey, do you want this?"
Yeah.
Like we got.
So we've got that. And
we got the root plushies, and she was like, "Oh my god!"
Oh yeah, those are really nice. So we've got the game, and then we've got, if you buy the game directly from our website, we've got a little mini expansion called the Shrines and Fountains that you can pick up. It comes free if you buy the game directly from us. If you end up buying the game at somewhere else like Amazon or something, then you can always come back and grab the mini expansion but it costs something at that point.
Right.
That's kind of our model, is that we don't do a lot of like Kickstarter exclusives because I really don't like that feeling, because I'm a Kickstarter backer first and then a creator second. But like when you buy a game and you knew it was on Kickstarter and you bought it 2 years later, and the Kickstarter backers had some crazy little thing that you want and you can't find it, or you can pay $300 for it or something. So I don't really want to create that experience for my customers. So we always offer the game at like somewhere around like a 20% discount, and then we give you a free mini expansion of some kind or some bonus that comes with the game, and that people would also buy from our website down the road if they want to. So that's kind of my stance on kind of FOMO when it comes to Kickstarter campaigns.
Yeah.
It's tricky because creators that do have Kickstarter exclusive content, it ends up creating a lot of pledges for them, and it gives them a certain level of success on that platform. But I'm always thinking down the road. Like I want these games to have a long tail. I want them to be in print for a long time. I don't want to just be like, this game was available for a short period of time and then it's gone. And if you missed it, kind of too bad.
Someone's thinking
I
ahead.
want to support these games for a long time, and that means I don't want to create a product that basically a lot of my customers aren't going to be able to get down the road.
Sorry, I'm currently distracted by these blacklight activated metal tiles for Metro Runner.
Yeah, they're cool. So in the game on the board, there's like 9 tiles that it's like that's the hacking puzzle of the game. So like
Yeah.
whenever you're running around the city and you do hack actions, you're trying to create these pathways, kind of like Suro if you've ever played that game. But you're like twisting the tiles or you're swapping them, and we just said, hey, wouldn't it be cool to do some metal tiles? So we did these kind of like that weird coloring on them is called rack plating, I think. And then we had them paint like blacklight reactive kind of highlights on them, so they turn out really cool. And you don't see a whole lot of blacklight activated components in board games, so I thought it was kind of a fun idea.
Yeah, no, that's like I said, it drew my eye. Oh, I see. Here,
Yeah.
it's in the middle of the board here.
Yeah, so the ones in that image are the cardboard ones, which are fine. They work great, and that game is really thick, like 3mm cardboard, which I like to do because it's just cooler. And you can swap them out for the metal tiles if you end up picking those up separately.
Yeah, I know. I know it probably makes more. It's more like Suro, but just the shape and the coloring of the tiles made me think. What was it? Pipe Dream? Was that old like really?
Oh, that old
the old Windows one?
Entertainment Pack game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of those kind of connection-y kind of games. There was a game called Metro back in the day, which actually I guess this one's called Metro Runner, so that's kind of funny. I didn't think of that until just now. And they renamed it. I think they renamed it to like San Francisco Cable Car or something, but it had these kind of the twisting and turning of the paths.
Yeah.
So in this game, like you're given a hack card that says, hey, or it's kind of a network card. You're trying to connect these two things, and if you do, you get a reward. And then as you basically get more powerful, then you get like secondary paths that you can connect. So you can do even cooler, get cooler rewards. This is a Metro Runner. It's a solid it's an hour-long game. Like it doesn't overstay its welcome, but it cooks along pretty nice, even at 5 players. There's a little bit of engine building where you're finishing jobs and it's kind of giving you bonuses on future kind of jobs, and you're trying to run up some tracks. I love games with tracks for some reason. And there's like at the bottom of the board, there's 2 little tracks that you're trying to run up. And they both kind of, one makes your hacking more powerful, and the other one makes kind of completing jobs easier, and you're getting points the further up you're on those tracks into. So yeah, it's a cool one. I worked with the designer is actually local, and I ended up hiring him as a graphic designer. I signed this game from him, and then I found out he was a graphic designer, and then I ended up having him come on to work on some games as a graphic designer, and then his design kind of took the back seat to getting like Stonemaier out first or some other things. So it's just been a long time coming, and I'm excited to have it come out. So the game designer is also the graphic designer on that title.
Although I feel like especially with offering those metal tiles, there's like a good chance that some people will be like, I just want a mini version of the hacking game. Like, just give me some rules so I could just play with the metal tiles. Whatever the standalone rules.
We could publish them in White Dwarf magazine.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and if anything is possible. That's interesting.
Sorry, that's the fidget spinner person in me, where it's like just having something to fiddle with, where the tactile, just having something to fiddle with by myself in between game nights.
So you're the guy that like you sit down at the table and you're given a bunch of wooden pieces and you start stacking them
Yup.
immediately.
Yup. Totally. And then I knock them
So
over and stack them up again.
there you go. Yeah.
You're
So
like a
that's
cat.
Well, the cat doesn't stack. Okay.
so that's yeah. Metro Runner and Stone Spine Architecture are the two 2024 releases. Look for the crowdfunding on Kickstarter for Emerald Skulls, and we got some other cool stuff later in the year that we're not really talking about yet. But
Oh yeah, and I mean, there's always the stuff going on, especially like if you're a big fan of cartographers. It seems like there's always new map packs. Like that's one of the cool parts about this game is it's so easy to just generate a new map. I just realized I don't even have one of these map packs that I'm gonna have to pick up because I have
yeah, there's 6 of them.
yeah I have the collector's edition, so I think I have the first 3, but I don't
That's
have
correct.
I
Yes.
don't have the last 3.
Yeah. The it's interesting. Like I always ask people, especially people who are big cartographers fans, is like, which map packs do you like the best? And I always get I usually get a totally different answer. Like there isn't one that everybody loves, um, but there's a lot of love for the 5th one, um, and there's a lot of love for the second one. No, the 3rd one, Undercity. There's a lot of people that like that one, and Catherine Step. There's a lot of people that like that one too. But I like the first one. I like volcanoes, so I'm all in on the volcanoes.
That was
So,
what sold me on the ideas. I saw that one first, and I was like, ooh.
yeah. So and they're all played very. They all have their own set of rules. They all have their own additional cards, and there's some important gameplay change, but it's not like overwhelming. Like oh here's 10 more rules I have to remember. It's like here's 3 more things I have to remember.
Yep.
Um, and so they're easy to swap in, and they offer a different experience, and they're cool. And we've got there's more cartography. We just released a new mini expansion for cartographers, which is called the Cartographers Architects. It came out at the same time as
I did see
Stone
that.
Architects. There's the upper right hand corner, yeah. So it has 4 new cards. One that lets you draw mountains, which is brand new. And then it's got a new hero, which is themed after the Minotaur from Stone Spine Architects. Has a new scoring card that's themed after the guy that you play in solo mode in Stone Spine Architects, and then a new ambush, which is the slime card. And the thing that's nice, if you haven't played Cartographers Heroes yet, you've only played the regular Cartographers, is that after the base game, we started adding ambush monsters that have special abilities on them. So like the slime has a cool ability that basically when you destroy him, he like splits into a smaller version, kind of like you'd expect if you were playing Dragon Warrior or something like
Right.
that. So there's cool stuff like that. There's some in Heroes. There's a zombies monster that like if you don't take care of him, he starts multiplying on your board too. So there's a bunch of we've kind of come up with some more ways to add interesting things to the game without really adding any major rules or anything too. So it's been pretty good.
Right. I love that the mountains it's the Stone Spine Mountains. So you're
Right.
already referencing the Stone Spine Architects.
And exactly. And so I mean the original origin of that just that word for us is in we have this adventure game called Role Player Adventures that is narrative driven. You're reading choose your own adventure style entries, and there's like one passage in one of this 400,000 word game that it talks about the Stone Spine Mountains. I was like, all right, this is a mountain range that we know that exists in our world. So let's set this dungeon building game in those mountains. And now you've got the Stone Spine Architects, right? So it's been fun to like let the writers of these games kind of go crazy and then take their kind of single drop of information and expand that into something new and different and more fleshed out.
Yeah. I know a lot of y'all like your Gloomhavens and stuff, and that's okay too. But I like me a game with dice, so that's
Yeah, I mean,
that's one reason I
Gloomhaven
love
is
Role
cool,
Player.
like Gloomhaven is a tactical combat game. Role Player Adventures is a narrative, choice-based adventuring game. They both are big games. They both are great and fun to play, but they play very, very differently. Um, and I love Gloomhaven as not much as the next guy, but sometimes I just want an awesome story. Other times I just want to beat up a ton of monsters, right? So it's kind
Yeah.
of the two different experiences. Like you mentioned before, like Theater of the Mind versus, just kind of number crunching.
Right.
They're both great, but different experiences.
Yeah, I have a feeling I need to get Role Player Adventures. There's no reason I didn't get it before because I'm putting a kid through college, but
Yeah, it's
And-
I mean, it's a big box, and there's the adventure modules look like D&D adventure modules in a lot of ways from the
Yeah.
80s. Not It's not a coincidence. But it's a big box, a lot of words, but it's a really good time.
Here you go, Philip.
I
Import
did-
your hero from Role Player.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that was like the hook, right? So you can take any character that you've made in Role Player, which is a competitive character building game, and import it into Role Player Adventures, which is a cooperative kind of DM-less adventuring game. And that was a pretty interesting challenge to try to import one thing from one game into another one, 5 years after you designed the first one. So it was not part of the plan to do this, but we
Right.
figured out a way to do it. And I don't know of any other board games that do that. So it was exciting. I mean, I'm a big video game player from back in the day, and I remember when you load up PS1 RPG, like the game that I always think of is the Suikoden ones, where it sees your save file from the original
Yeah.
game on your memory card. It's like, hey, do you want to import this and keep using this adventure? And you're like, yes, I do. Thank you very
Or
much.
like Mass Effect.
Yeah, so that was always the idea and the goal. And you don't have to do that. You can play it. There's 36 pre-generated characters you can just pick and go. But people like that idea of being able to roll up their character in Role Player Adventure or in Role Player and then go on an adventure with them, right? So.
So what I want to know is, did you actually, is there reasoning behind all the 36, or did you just play Role Player a whole bunch to just spit out a bunch of different characters for the pre-gens?
I think it was because the game is based on the number 6 because there's 6 different colors, there's 6 values on a die, and it's just a multiple of that, so there's 6. There's black. The 6 colors in the game are black, white, red, blue, green, and purple, and so there's 6 characters that each are in those class kind of lanes. And the thing that was tough is we have this kind of backstory system. If you ever played Role Player, you've got these backstory cards, and all the base game and all the expansions, there's 42, I believe, backstory cards, and we have a specific side quest for each backstory card that exists. So some of the pre-gen characters, there's not enough pre-gen characters to cover all those backstories. So some of those backstories that are in that book will only be taken by people that imported their character from Role Player. But we tried to cover that with when we added more pre-gen characters in this second expansion.
There you go. So it's like you buy if for some reason you were one of the people that bought the first game or bought the Adventures game first, and you're like, dang it, now I have to go buy this other game so that I can experience this extra piece of content.
Yeah, I mean it's like any kind of these branching narrative games. You're always thinking about how much work do we put into creating content that 5% of the users are gonna see, right? Because it's all about making choices, and that means the number of people that get to this part of the adventure is a small percentage because there's so many different branches. But we did spend a lot of time building out custom mini adventures for each one of those backstories. So it's so much to the point where we say if you're only playing with two players, take two backstories so that you can kind of see a little bit more of the content. Um, so that's always kind of the when we're thinking about these games of like, because they take a lot of work to make and to support all these branches in a branching narrative that, but we're pretty dedicated to it, and I'm glad we did. So
Awesome. Well, with that, I've got a nice little treat for us here. So it's not a game show like what we normally do, but it's a nice fun activity that hopefully someone will get a giggle out of. But we've got a lot of dungeon talk and monsters and this and that. So I had the bright idea to reach way back as I hit the Steam Deck. As I reach way back into the archives and pulled a game that nobody on this podcast has probably ever heard of, because it was one we did way back on the OCD show. Philip,
Okay.
do you remember Monster Manual Mad Libs?
Yeah, yeah.
So what I've got here is I found they've got a random monster generator, and I found now back in the day I'd had to flip through the book because it didn't exist, but I've gone through the 5th edition monster manual and I've grabbed for Dungeons and Dragons a random monster here, and I've taken like the first paragraph of the description and I've chucked out a bunch of the words in it, and we're gonna fill out a Mad Lib about this creature, and then for a giggle, for a bonus point or something, if you can guess the monster, sure. But I expect probably, unless you've played a lot of 5th edition, I'm kind of doubting that. But
Right.
so I will go ahead and say, go ahead and start thinking of a bunch of nouns because there are a lot of nouns in this one.
Gotcha.
So Philip, I'll have you start, and I need you to give me an adjective.
Adjective. Tall.
Tall. Okay. And then Keith, I need a verb ending in ing.
swiping,
Swiping. Okay. And then Philip, a noun.
Book.
Book. All right. Keith, I need a plural noun.
doorways,
All right. Philip, I need another noun.
Table.
Table.
Yes.
All right. Keith, I need a verb.
slam,
What was that?
slam,
Slam. Okay.
Come on and slam. And welcome to the jam.
All right. Philip, I need another noun.
Phone.
What was that?
Phone.
Oh, it keeps bleeping like the
Phone.
first.
Phone.
Yeah. It
Oh,
keeps bleeping
well,
like the
I
first
mean-
syllable. So all I heard was own. And I'm like,
You're the system automatically radio editing me. I mean, that's an upgrade.
all right, Keith, let me get another noun.
kingdom,
Kingdom. Oops. If I say kingdom. All right. Philip, give me an object.
An object.
Yeah. So kind of a noun, but something specific.
Yeah, but a specific. Yeah. Cup.
Cup. All right. That works.
Yeah.
And then, Keith, I need an adjective.
disgusting,
All right. Almost done. Philip, noun.
Microphone.
Okay. And then Keith, one more noun. Last noun, I promise.
yeah. We've been doing a lot of things, so I was thinking about people or places. Bedroom,
All right. And then Philip, I need a verb ending in ing.
Speaking.
All right. And then let me double check. One last verb.
that for me?
Yep.
Um, Right. WRIGHT or WRIT. I can't spell.
All right. And then I messed up and found one. One last one is an adjective, Philip.
Adjective.
Yep.
Shiny.
Shiny. Okay. So here we go. This creature, swiping a mixture of phone, bedroom, table, and microphone, one can write rare, disgusting magic to create a shiny cup-sized companion. This creature is a book that slams as an extension of its kingdom, with the two speaking thoughts, doorways, and language through a tall bond. Any thoughts on what it is? Like I said, you're probably not going to get it, but I find it funny.
Yeah.
So much of it was kind of poked out.
Yeah.
It's a homunculus, is what the thing was.
Okay. Yeah. There was no way.
I like one can write rare, disgusting magic to create a shiny cup-sized companion.
It's fun.
It's a book that
cool
slams.
Idea.
This book slams. That sounds like that's that was close with an imp.
Yeah.
That sounds like some hip hop or some slang.
Yeah, some Gen Z.
This book slams.
No cap.
All right. I know when to call it.
Yeah,
Reach the button.
That's been our show. We want to thank Keith from Thunderworks Games for coming on and chatting with us and putting up with our shenanigans. If you like what you see, you got to head over to boardsandswords.com. That's got the links for where we stream. It's got the schedule for when we stream. It's also got stuff we've done in the past. So go ahead and check us out over there.
And then I got to turn this down so that Keith can actually hear me. So Keith, where can people find out more about Thunderworks Games?
www.thunderworksgames.com is the best place to go, but you can also find us on, Insta and Twitter and Facebook. But really, just going to our website is the easiest place, and you can just reach out to us there. Pretty responsive.
All right, we love feedback. Make sure to send us some feedback. Let us know who we need to talk to next. You can email us feedback@boardsandswords.com. Or you can find us on Facebook @BoardsAndSwordsPod or on Instagram @BoardsAndSwordsChris. Don't want to remember all that? BoardsAndSwords.com. It's got the links for everything else, like the Patreon. Check it out. Help support the show. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another great show. If you're a big board game fan, I know sometimes we tend to drift into RPGs and we tend to drift into tabletop, talking about your minis games. But the next few episodes are very much going to be board game focused. Next week we have Patrick Leader from Leader Games is going to be here in 2 weeks, not next week. In 2 weeks he's going to be here, so that'll be lots of fun. All right, so in the meantime, remember that every gamer has a story, and I want to go roll some dice now. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on stream. I'm going to go ahead and kill this.